Hey, so I had a commenter ask, I'm definitely going to do this. I didn't even think about it. Great ideas. You're definitely a pro at Mexican genealogy. I haven't found any native ancestors yet, only mestizo European or African, but I'm about 39% indigenous, so I'll probably know I have to go back pretty far. Also, how trustworthy are the ancestry DNA hints? I get them, but I do not trust them unless the documents are very similar. All right, so just to answer your question, thank you, Huraches en el Desierto, for that. And as far as you being 39% indigenous, that's awesome. Yeah, you'll certainly find indigenous ancestors. You'll just have to trace back to around 1820, 1830s. It depends on the location. Some places, even though the caste system had been outlawed, still was giving caste records out, even like 1838 or 1840. I think that's the latest I've seen, but it just depends on the place. Some places are very strict. Right after 1821, they stopped. Which that's when Mexico obtained their independence. So now you're asking how trustworthy are ancestry DNA hints? Well, it just depends. And you're saying that you don't trust them unless the documents are very similar. That's a really good rule of thumb to do. You're already doing a great job. I'll just show you, of course, what you should watch out for. So, first of all, when you get to a set of grandparents, right, a set of direct ancestors, you're going to have some document either from their son, who is your direct your direct ancestor that led you to those two people, right? Whether that be the marriage of the son or the birth record of the son, right? So let's just take a look at this, right? You just want things to be consistent and to fit, to be able to say, you know what, this hint's correct. Okay, so for example, Pedro de Josef de la Garza, right? So he was married in Monclova, right? Okay, he was baptized in Monclova, right? And that stated who his parents were, Francisco Javier de la Garza and Gertrudis Valdez in this example, right? So let's go to Francisco Javier de la Garza. We start adding hints. I've already done a lot of work on this line. This is my Jewish line here. You get all the siblings and you want to take a look at the hint section, which you probably already utilized it while you were building it. I know I did. This is examples of bad hints, okay? So the biggest thing you have to pay attention to is the time, yes, but the location is a really big giveaway, So let's take a glance here. Okay, so here's one for Javier de la Garza with Gertrudis Cavazo, so a different spouse with the child Jose Viz de la Garza in Nuevo Leon. So let's just review this. Let's see. Let's see what's going on. Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe, Salinas Victoria, Nuevo León. Obviously, this is completely wrong. This wouldn't be anything to do with our Francisco Javier de la Garza, especially because, he clearly had a wife, Gertrudis Valdez, and later on he had one named Gloria Hernandez, who was a Tlaxcalteca. Everything's occurring in Monclova, or it's occurring in the very, the close surroundings of Monclova, which would be Nadadores. So, let's pull up Google Maps. So it just needs to be consistent in terms of the location, man. Like if it's extremely far away, just like a huge jump in states or like opposite ends of the state, it's probably not, it's probably not going to be correct. I'm not saying it's never going to be correct, because sometimes ancestors do move, but you need to really have a skeptical eye over that. So, for example, they mentioned Nadadores in that second marriage. So the reason why I knew it was correct for Francisco Javier is that Nadadores is only 34 miles from Santiago Apostol Monclova right here. That's very reasonable. Very, very reasonable distance, and it makes sense. These are two churches close by in pueblos from forever ago. Now, let's do Salinas Victoria, right? Salinas Victoria, and I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's extremely unlikely. Well, the distance is 200 kilometers away, but all the events are happening over here in Monclova. All the baptisms of all the kids, the marriage to the first wife and to the second wife is occurring there in this little area. But suddenly there's a hint for an additional child with a different wife in this other area. That makes no sense. This 200 kilometers away, it just doesn't add up. The evidence doesn't point to it. So, it's safe to say that's a bad hint. That's not relevant at all. That's something to ignore, and you can get rid of it by just hitting the ignore button to clear things up. So just consistency and location is my biggest advice. Obviously timing, like, if it seems like, it's a, he got married to his wife in 1736, right? But the hint is he had a kid in 1830, right? Baptized. Well, he's going to be way too old to have had a kid in 1830 if he got married in 1736. See, you know what I mean? But I've seen people in certain trees, like they don't pay attention to these details. They'll add it. And I'm like, how is it possible? I've seen really egregious stuff where somebody's like, they married this person in like 1650 and they have a hint approved that they had a child with that person in 1840. And it's like, dude, that's like 300 years apart. What the heck are you doing? Are you even reading what you're accepting? So yes, just be careful. I'll give you a good example of a good hint right here. So for example, because I haven't worked on this side of the tree too much, I'll show you guys which side I'm talking about. Is this over here? This is my Urio side. Rafael de Uro and Francisco Uro. Sorry, I said Urio. That's like straight up from Bleach, like that one Quincy guy. I didn't mean to say that. All right, so I found his baptism. His parents were Rafael de Oro or de Uro and Leoncia de la Garza, leading back to Marcus Alone, so another Jew. So if you go to Rafael de Uro, I haven't worked on him that much, right? But Francisco, right? He was baptized in Melchor Musquiz in Coahuila. Okay. Well, let's take a look at his father's hints and see if it would be relevant, So here is a death for a proposed sibling. Leoncia de la Garza, Leoncia, sometimes these are just errors in terms of whoever's indexing it misread the thing. So I would still trust that. Just take a look at the record and stuff, because there's plenty of times where I can actually read the record, but whoever indexed it made a mistake. So here's another Leoncia. It's just, they're just screwing up. Whoever's indexing is not reading it right, or maybe the priest himself is just screwing it up. But before it said that that Francisco, right, the son, was baptized in Melchor. Well, here's a death record for a sibling, Josefa, from Musquiz, Melchor Musquiz. That would be relevant. That, I would accept that hint because it's consistent. The timing's consistent. The location's consistent. Same parents. If we go to Apolonio over here, San Fernando de Rosas, I would still take this because this is probably really close. Like let's take a glance here. Melchor Musquiz. Okay. And sorry, I have to double back on San Fernando de Rosas. Sometimes these towns, like, they change names eventually, and they don't even exist, because back then they did. I guess we'll do Zaragoza, Coahuila, because it's presenting that as an option. 114, but that's still within the same state. And if we probably, I would probably explore this hint if I was going to add it. And what I would do, first of all, it might be indexed wrong. But second of all, I would just simply say, okay, let's take a glance at what the record is saying. Like, where is it saying that he's from? Because in the record, it'll say originario de tal pueblo, or the parents. It'll even say where the parents are from. Los papás son originarios de Melchor Musquiz. So you could take a glance and you would be able to tell pretty well, again, by examining the record itself. Okay, well, is it consistent with what I know? And if it's not, you don't have to take it. You don't have to ignore it. You can just leave it for later. You can follow up on it in the future. But again, just consistency and location is everything for this. Consistency in the years and the timings. Obviously, you don't want the person to have been too old or too young. If they died and there's a hint for them having a child after their death, that's obviously wrong. So yeah, just basic consistency. But I just wanted to obviously show that Ancestry is prone to like give you hints that are blatantly incorrect, but a lot of times they will offer hints that are very, very good. Now, here's one thing you can do, which is very useful. Okay. To minimize the chance, because a lot of the times the hints themselves are not that great on Ancestry. So what you can do is, once you add a record, because it's 100% correct, you go to view record. Okay. And then you can go over here to the suggested records and open those up. And those, you know, 8 times out of 10 are going to be relevant, and they're going to be information that you need, that you can absolutely add, that is completely relevant. See, look right here. Here's another sibling, Juan de Uro, and marriage place in Melchor Musques. But that's obviously a sibling of his. But actually, that might not be the correct person, because again, we got to pay attention to the names. It says Jose de Uro instead of Rafael. Of course, we also got to take into account, you know, people had multiple names, so sometimes he could be Rafael Jose de Uro or Jose Rafael de Uro. So, you know, you could always again put that in your back pocket, and then maybe if you find his baptism right here by his parents, it'll often state the full original name. For example, I have an ancestor over here, right? Pedro de la Garza. His baptism says Pedro Jose de la Garza. So that's his full name, but other records he's just going as Pedro de la Garza. So just details you just got to keep a lookout for, and you've just got to look for the consistency. And if you have any questions, just put it to the side until you confirm it with further documentation. So, but that is my advice. Sorry if I ramble too long, but if anybody else has any questions, by all means, just drop a comment and I'll do a short response video to, you know, give you kind of like that one-on-one feeling. Cause I mean, this channel is just completely all about genealogy. So I have no issue doing that for whatever questions people have.